Good afternoon, Takahashi-san. Good afternoon, Yukimoto-san, Uno-san. Actually, we were already in the process of talking about populism in the past. Populism and what gave rise to populism. And
video was young Bremer.
Ian Bremmer,
Yeah,
exactly. Ian Bremmer, who was talking about globalization and globalism, two trends.
Edson said to me, globalization and globalism is different.
It's different. Globalization is actually the economics. So globalization in itself, that's basically all the economic relationships are becoming global. That means outsourcing, basically manufacturing moving all across the world. Finance is moving all across the world at the speed of light. And this has led to globalization as a whole has led to dramatic improvement in the, for example, the poverty statistics. When I was a kid, I think 2/3 of the world was living below the poverty line. At the moment, it's about 20% that lives below the poverty line. So globalization has had a big impact on the world, not only in poverty but also in health statistics. So actually we can say that globalization as such has delivered. But globalism, that's something else. That's a political movement, and that actually wants to tell us all that globalization is good for the world. Now we have seen the statistics and we see that actually it did actually contribute a lot to the world. But where there are winners, there are also losers, and especially the lower and middle class in the first world, they have been left out in all the benefits. They have not seen their real wages increase for 20 years or longer. They see that the world around them, there are a few people who get extremely rich, but they don't get ahead in life, and this has led to a movement, a sentiment where.
Oh, did you see my Economist articles? I sent you.
About France, ne?
Yes. France.
So sorry. I don't have time to study materials.
Oh my God. Okay, go ahead.
But actually, this there is a sentiment now that the system is rigged. There is a sentiment that there are only a few winners and there are a lot of losers, and we are not honest about it. There's a few players who get extreme riches, and they are giving preferential positions to their children, to their friends, and there are a lot of people who are left behind. Globalism as such is it needs to be questioned, and what we see that in response to globalism, politicians like Donald Trump, politicians like Marine Le Pen, politicians like in Italy, in Hungary, but also like in many other countries, there is a tendency towards populism. Britain. Brexit is also basically a response to a world that has become more open, where a lot of people feel uncomfortable. The middle class, the elder generation in the UK massively voted to leave the EU because they want to go back to their roots. They feel that that the power is moving, slipping out of their hands, and they are left. It's left into the hands of Europeans, and they want to take it back. They want to take back control, and politicians that are now saying, okay, I understand your pain. I understand that we need to do something. Politicians have been lying to you. Globalism is not benefit for all. The system is rigged. That we have bad deals with the global community. This all needs to change back. We need to take back control. So that is happening now. Last week we were looking at one example of the rigged system, taxes. We have been looking at a video of the VPRO, the Dutch broadcasting company, and in this video we were looking at tax havens and how companies like Facebook and Starbucks are only paying about maybe less than 2% of income tax.
Double addition on that sound.
Yes, and while the regular folk, the regular people who they pay 35%, so that's not fair. That's not fair, because these companies actually they like a company like Starbucks, they are utilizing the infrastructure, they're utilizing the educational system to have trained employees, they have a good infrastructure, they have everything there, but they're not paying into that system. They are just basically taking all the profits out of the country, move it into a tax haven, and basically leaving the governments with a debt, because they cannot generate enough taxes to pay for that infrastructure. Now that money in the tax havens is then being lent out to these same governments, so it's coming back, but it's coming back via a detour, and it's increasing the debts all over the world. So this is an example.
Sorry, increasing debt what are the debt all over the world? What increasing?
Public debt. Public debt is increasing everywhere.
Why public debt increasing?
Well, basically because the tax revenues are diminishing.
Okay.
So if we don't pay taxes and we still want to provide public services like infrastructure, schooling, healthcare.
Which country is it?
Well, all the Western in the Western world, the developed world, we see that debt is increasing, is ballooning. Like debt in the U.S., debt in Japan, debt in European countries. We can't keep it under control, and because debt is accumulating. What we see is that actually how to make sure that governments don't fall over is we see that capital is becoming cheaper and cheaper. So actually I would like to start today as actually a follow-up on the video of last week about taxes, another way that the system is actually rigged for the average inhabitant, the average middle class person in the developed world. Yeah, so this is a documentary about, it's called The Money Deluge, and it shows how regular people.
You showed us last week, right?
No, this is a different one. This is a different.
Similar.
This is the first one was about taxes.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, because companies, the people who have a lot of money, they don't pay taxes. Yes, today is different. Today is another example of how people feel betrayed, how people are being deceived by a few people who make lots of money while they are left paying the bill.
Why coffee?
I bought it yesterday.
Frozen coffee?
No, I bought yesterday frozen.
Frozen coffee.
Yeah, no, not frozen. I froze.
小野さん、backup failed. 大丈夫？
Right?
Backup failed.
Fake.
Oh, fake.
Fake.
Okay.
This is fake.
So that's a big point here that you need to remember. So by incorporating yourself, you invest, and your company. If you create a company buys real estate, that buys assets. The only thing that can happen to you is only the money that you invested in that company. So why we saw this image before, that we see that we have like the value of the shares of Bill Gates compared to all the cash money, compared to all the to all the GDP collected together, compared to all the derivatives. Basically, everything is being inflated, and cash is changing, and money is, and debt is changing hand over hand. But every time debt changes hand, money is being made, being generated. The interest rates are being kept low, So it is not only a good way for states to get money and to provide public services, but also for people who have the capacity to create these companies to get cheap money from the capital market and put it in assets and make a return.
What do you mean? I don't understand. You just said cheaper interest rate, so they can get a lot of money. That's it, right?
Yes.
They make investment there.
No, actually,
So
so
what?
the point is actually.
Okay, they borrow the money, the cheap interest rate, and they invest real estate. They get a lot of money.
So okay, let's put it this way. I'm opening a KK in Japan. I'm opening a KK, and that KK I invest 5 million. Ooh. Then that KK is taking a loan, but not for 5 million, maybe for 20 million, 100 million.
100 billion. Oh.
Yeah, that's possible. So I can take that money out. So basically, I create money out of nothing, right? Now later on, we will see how the banks do that. But what if that fails? If that 100 million fails, then my loss is only 5 million, because that's what I put in my KK.
What do you mean? I don't understand.
My risk is limited to my investment in the KK. Yeah. That's it.
But what is the point?
The point is that the rich, the people who can create these KKs, they run very limited risk, only 5 million, but they're actually playing with 100 million. This opportunity.
This is corporation.
Yeah, okay, but this opportunity doesn't exist for regular folks.
Yeah, that's a rich.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, because, and we will see later how much money that can generate.
Yeah.
But that's why, basically, the gap between rich and poor is getting bigger and bigger.
Okay.
66 million pounds.
How come so expensive?
Well, pure speculation.
Oh, pure speculation.
Pure speculation, because there are other people who invest because the prices have been going up. So they're just investing that. Money is almost free to them because they can take it out. They can borrow it at zero interest rates. And if they lose,
same. My wife told me, she want to live at most expensive place. She wrote the information. She said, "Oh, this is how much? 55 million US dollars. Somebody bought this in Tokyo, right? 55 million. No kidding. Yes, immediately the real estate company sold it. Just like you said, Tokyo, same.
So,
who bought? Hong Kong people.
And it's empty, no? It's empty. So what you see actually that in these expensive areas, like in Tokyo, like Hiro, and in London here, we see that there's a lot of places that are empty. They're just used for speculative purposes. That's also why Airbnb was always blamed for this bubble, but it's not Airbnb. Actually, it happens before Airbnb. Airbnb is just being used to cover the running costs of these places. So that's the Airbnb is being blamed for the empty houses in the city centers. It's not Airbnb. It's this housing speculation scheme.
Not devalue?
Well, of course, there will be a time, and it will not devalue. It will just burst.
No. I'm talking about if nobody live there, but this is devalued.
I don't think actually, understand the value doesn't come from the living comfort. I mean, basically, 66 million for a place that size, that's ridiculous, right? That's completely overinflated. It has nothing to do with what people want to pay in rents, etc. It's just an investment object. So what these financial wizards are doing is they're looking for places and opportunities where they say, okay, there is enough interest in the market, it's undervalued, and they are going after it with free money. They buy up these companies and they sell it off a little bit later at a very high profit margin.
I make lots of strange gambles, incredible reckless decisions, but they come good. Then I make huge amounts of money. If they go bad, maybe I lose my job, but that's the only downside. So this is what is called an asymmetrical risk. It encourages short-term gambling.
So that's the key word here, asymmetrical risk. So people who work in the system, people who are investing, their risk is limited, but so taking a risk is beneficial because if you have a lot of leverage. So if you, for example, work as a trader, then investing a lot of money gives you the opportunity to make huge bonuses. If your investments go bad, there are huge losses, but the only thing that you lose is your job, right? The same thing for people who make these investments in this real estate in London. They create a shell company. That shell company takes out a loan. If there is a bust of the housing prices in London City, then they might go bankrupt. But the only thing they lose is the investment that they make in their shell company. So there is asymmetrical risk. The risk for the richest, the risk for the people who are working in this industry is very limited, but the cost to society as a whole is enormous. The fact that so much money is flowing onto the market is because basically it's necessary to keep the financial system going. If there would be high interest rates, a lot of states going to get into trouble, a lot of countries would get into trouble, and therefore the ECB, China, United States, everywhere there is a lot of money coming into the market at almost zero interest rates. But this is just to sustain the system. It could easily come to a halt.
So
if it comes to a halt, then we're all screwed. And the problem is that actually the people who are not benefiting here are the people who are actually saving the money, who actually hold the wealth.
That's the ordinary people.
Yeah, the guy who with the bicycle in the beginning of the video, who has been working his life, who has savings, but he gets zero interest rates. And what you see in a world with so much money, with speculation, the housing prices go up, rents go up, and the cost of these people go higher. While a few people who are gaming the system have a lot of opportunity to make huge revenue, and the majority of the people basically see their assets see their assets actually not generating any revenue. And what's worse, if the whole Ponzi scheme falls apart, then the people who make the profits stay completely unscratched. This is why Trump is saying that the system is rigged. He knows, because he rigged it together with a few other people who are in the position to accumulate these enormous debts at almost zero interest rates. Take risk, right? So you take it, you build a company, you put in 100 million. Based on that 100 million, you can get 560 million. With that 560 million, you buy a company of 660 million. Then, because there is so much money, somebody else thinks, oh, I can make money of that. So they want to buy that company because they set up the same structure. Actually, in a few years' time, the company they bought for 660, they can sell for 1.6 billion. Sell that company for 1.6 billion, right? So that 1.6 billion, that they pay off the 560, but they still have that 560 that they borrowed, and that still leaves them 940 million in profit, with only 100 million investment.
But actually, the beer company, largest beer company,
Yeah.
they sold the stock.
And how's it? Yeah.
they sold their stock of Australia or some company.
Yeah. That's right.
killing-
That's right. Yeah.
They couldn't sustain the debt.
Ah, really?
Yeah. Too much borrowed money.
Mm. Yeah, they bought the number too, like enormous sum.
Too much.
Yeah. 100 billion.
Even if the interest rates are low,
Dollars.
but they cannot sustain the loan.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Well, still, but it's marginal interest rates. But you see that, okay, then if it falls over, this is all going through a shell company, right? This is not going directly. So Anheuser is not really going to default. It's basically the company that sits in the middle.
Not all story like this.
Right.
What I want to say.
But what you see is that this goes over once, twice, 3 times.
Yeah. It's a good
And money
good,
is making
good
money.
good story, but that
Yeah.
story also
Yeah.
exists. I tell you.
Yeah, sure. But the point is that the bad story exists, but the risk that people take is 100 million.
Oh, this is business. Some cases
Right.
success, some cases fail.
Yeah, some cases success, some cases miss. But you see that the risk is 100 million, but the potential profit is 1.6 billion.
I understand.
So
It's
this is very
success case.
attractive. I mean, this is very attractive way of gambling.
Yeah.
This is the chances
They
here
pick good,
are
good
only
case.
for a few
Yeah, I know.
rich people.
They picked good case.
Yeah. Still.
What is
So basically, in the new system, any private bank can hand out a loan by transferring 2 to 3% of the entire loan's worth. So in this case, it's 1%, right? So 1% they transfer it to the central bank. But what they can do then is electronically generate a loan of 10,000 euro in exchange. So basically, the central bank doesn't have any control over the money that's being created. It's not being created by the central bank, it's being created by the private banks. That system is completely out of control.
I don't understand what you mean.
Well, normally, you would basically need to have in a system, if you want to lend out 10,000 euro, you would need to have 10,000 euro or a proportional portion of that 10,000 euro in savings. So normally you would take out 10,000 euro from a pensioner, for example, and put that into your safe. Then if somebody comes in and wants to borrow 10,000, you take that 10,000, you hand it over to the guy who wants to borrow it, and basically that's how the system closes. The difference between the money, the interest that you pay to the pensioner, and the interest that you receive from the person who wants to invest that $10,000 is what generates the revenue for the bank, right? But and then the central bank is kind of like looking at the economy and say, okay, well, we need to increase the money stock a little bit in order to keep inflation under control. So they're looking at the economy and things like that. But actually, that is not completely controlled by the central bank anymore, because now what happens is that basically if somebody comes in to the bank, asks for a 10,000 euro loan, instead of having to go to their safe and taking out the 10,000 from the pensioner, the only thing that they need to do at the bank is they just need to take 1% of the 10,000, make a transfer to the central bank, and that gives the bank the right to generate an electronic loan. Just punch in $10,000 into the account of the person who takes out that loan.
But private bank, they need to control the balance sheet, right?
Right, but basically
They can't lend money endlessly.
they can. Well, endlessly, probably they need to have some kind of a reserve. But basically, this whole process is not being controlled by the central banks anymore. It's now being it's put into the hands of the private banks.
Really?
But they are capable of creating new money.
Really?
Yeah.
Central bank cannot manage.
Well, the only thing that the central bank can do is they say, okay, well, as long as they get their 100 euro for every, so their 1% of every loan is going out, they can say, yeah, sure, that's fine. Ultimately, I'm sure that the central bank will ask, okay, so, but you also need to have some level of reserve in order to do that.
Yeah, that.
But that is
I know
after
that,
the fact, né?
I know the laws control how much money they can lend the money to borrowers,
Right.
but
But that's after the fact.
what the issue? What do you want to say? I don't understand.
In this financial system is very, very dangerous because, like, in this case, the central bank doesn't immediately control it. The only thing that they do, okay, so you pay 100, you can issue a 10,000 loan. You can do that many times. Then there probably will be there's an oversight function of the central bank. So they say, okay, so you've given out 10 times a loan of 10,000. That's 100,000.
Oh.
So you paid us 1,000, but we also need to have a assets worth of maybe 10%. So that is 100,000. So do you have 10,000 in savings in your bank? Yes or no? If the answer is no, they cannot take any more, issue any more loans, right? But nothing stops this bank from loaning from a fellow bank 10,000 for the time of registration, and say, okay, can you borrow me 10,000 for now because I need to prove that I have 10,000 in savings? They just take out a loan from another bank. So banks, by working together, they can basically spin around this money and inflate the total money stock in the world. The central bank, by deregulating this, is no longer in control. This system is very, very dangerous.
Somewhere, why they are coordinate with the other banks, just borrow and lending.
Basically they can increase the money stock. They can increase the money stock completely. Like if you know by the end of the month you need to show that you have 10% of savings against your loans, then what stops you by the end of the month to say, okay, I'm just take out a loan from a fellow bank for a couple of days and say, yeah, sure, I have 10,000 in savings. And then you increase it to 20,000, to 30,000, but because every time you make out a loan, you make money because you get interest from the bank. Basically, they're creating money out of nothing.
I don't understand. Borrow is borrow. Lend is lend.
Yeah, no, actually. So the point here is that the money that people deposit and the money that people take out, they are no longer connected.
Yeah, I understand.
So,
but
that
200
means,
lend, 200 borrow is balancing.
No. It's not 200. It doesn't matter how much you. Basically, in this transaction, all of a sudden, $10,000, 10,000 euros has been created.
But this is lending, right?
Yeah, but where does the money come from?
But they have banks have laws based on law, so they have some limit of the lending money.
No.
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 No. They just
No.
They should have some asset.
Let's go back. The conclusion of the video is that basically the way that the financial world is operating at the moment creates asymmetric advantages for a few people. The bankers, the investors, that they have the opportunity to get access to a lot of money that is nearly free. Their risk is limited to their investment, but their uptake, their potential benefit is disproportionately large. So that leads to risk-taking behavior, and that risk-taking behavior, in order to do that, we see that money is being invested in things that do not bring added value to society as a whole. It's invested in real estate in London. It's invested in infrastructure projects that do not have an immediate benefit to the country. It doesn't reach positive initiatives, long-term investment, more risky investment. The point is basically here to strike a deal to game the system, not to let society grow. Plus, the way that this works out is that it creates a huge ballooning debt, paper debt. And once this this tower starts to tilt, it could come down, and then
Burst.
again we have the same situation as we had
Burst.
in 2008.
The same thing supposed to be happen again, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So this is the game that's only be played by a few, and a lot of people are suffering. The people who have been saving, the people who have been trying to make ends meet, they don't have these possibilities. The people who do have these possibilities, they can play with a lot of money.
Well, the senior people, what their pension plan, they are living by pension plan. What their future?
So basically what they're doing is they're trying to find ways that, okay, so maybe I need to buy shares or things like that, because otherwise they cannot make any money. They can't keep their money just in a savings account because it doesn't generate anything. They need some kind of ROI, otherwise they're just eating up their money, and then they will run out too soon.
Buy share risk.
That means risk.
The same thing happening in the world. Right?
I mean, buy shares, but what will happen to these shares if the financial system comes tumbling down? Then their money will be evaporated. So this is not good from whatever angle you look, and it is the whole way that the system works with tax havens that lead to money going into foreign deposits. That money sits there. That's being lent back into the system. That money is being lent out and lent out and lent out and lent out, and it's ballooning and ballooning and ballooning. But every time it balloons, people benefit. And people who are sitting in between doing these transactions, they benefit.
Yeah,
But ultimately,
we have two issues.
it works.
One is how to handle rich people,
Mm.
and second is how to handle poor people.
Mm.
Poor people means aging people,
Right.
right?
Right.
So we need to discuss kind of two issues.
Yep.
First issue is tax haven.
Mm.
Second issue is how to save universal basic income or something else.
Right.
We must consider for the aging people,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So, okay, this is the next issue, right?
Yep. That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. Shall I get some coffee and then?
Go ahead, you can take it. I have still some.
Okay. Kimoto-san, coffee?
Oh,
Yeah, he needs
I love
Yeah, okay.
Have it.
5 minute break.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
I also need a toilet break.
toilet break. Yes, that's right. I just
Hot coffee?
hot coffee.
Hot coffee.